You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The RTM will be convened on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 at 8 p.m. at Branford Fire Headquarters, 45 North Main Street, to consider and act upon the following matters. Will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Representative Alphone.
Representative Alphone, present.
Representative Amore.
Here.
Representative Anderson.
Here.
Representative Barron.
Here.
Representative Black.
Zoom.
He's here.
Zoom,
Yeah,
okay.
he's here.
Representative Bonenberger.
Here.
Representative Brooks. Representative Conklin.
Here.
Representative Everson.
Here.
Representative Erlanger. Representative Flanagan.
Here.
Representative Greenberg.
Here.
Representative Healy.
Present.
Representative Henschel.
He's on Zoom. He's on Zoom.
Zoom. Representative Hines.
Here.
Representative Ingraham.
Here.
Representative Kelly.
Here.
Representative Leach is present. Representative Maresca.
Here.
Representative Preet.
Here.
Representative Ricchio.
Present.
Representative Shrestha is
Here.
here.
Zoom.
Zoom. Representative Sires. Representative Stepanik.
Here.
Representative Sullivan.
Here.
Representative Torelli. Representative Toohill.
Here.
Representative Verderam.
Here.
Representative Witkowski.
He's absent.
Absent. And Representative Wells.
Here.
Okay, we have one absent.
Okay. All right, we have a quorum. Moving on to item 2, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Representative Ingraham to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved without exception. Item 3, reception of communications, reports of committees, and citizens' petitions. I have a few here. I have 2 items on this piece of paper here that'll be sent to Administrative Services to consider and, if appropriate, approve a third amendment to lease agreement between the town of Branford and J&J Blasting for an additional 3-year lease extension. The other item is to consider and, if appropriate, approve an amendment to lease agreement between the town of Branford and Zambelli Fireworks for an additional 3-year lease extension. This will be sent to Admin Services. Another item for Administrative Services. This is from the Finance Director. Dear Mr. Flanagan, please be advised that the town will be participating in the Neighborhood Assistance Tax Credit Program. In order for the programs to be eligible, they must be approved by the RTM and forwarded to the state by the end of June. In an effort to comply with this timetable, I respectfully request that this item be referred to the appropriate RTM committee to facilitate the required approvals before the filing deadline. Again, this will go to admin services. I have a letter here from Representative Ingraham. Dear Mr. Moderator Flanagan, please add to the call and assign to R&O to discuss and, if appropriate, adjust to align with Connecticut Constitutional Rule A 236-2, RTM Clerk, Rule 2.2, dealing with the absences of RTM members. This will go to the Rules and Ordinance Committee. And that's all I have. Do you remember that?
That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
That's all we have under that. Moving on to item 4, the Board of Finance approved the following budgets for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Board of Education operating budget, $60,931,374. Board of Education capital and leases, $263,000, for a total of $61,194,374. Town departments, $63,329,691, for a total of $124,524.65. A is to consider an appropriate.
You have to repeat the whole thing.
Yeah, I got to do the thing. A, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance by an appropriation of $61,194,374 to the Board of Education operating budget plus capital for fiscal year 2022-2023. And B, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $63,329,691 for other town departments for fiscal year 2022-2023. Representative Ingraham?
Mr. Moderator, for purpose of discussion, we have to have a motion from on the floor for approving the budget. I'm very happy to approve this budget. It's a lot of work over quite a few years to bring us to a $0 mil increase. So I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, we'll move on to committee reports, and I would ask the committees when they get up and give their reports and motions or whatever the case may be, that they state what budgets the committees heard, okay? We'll start with the Education Committee. Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I believe we're going to do the education budget first and then the other committee reports?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So the Education Subcommittee met on Monday, May 2nd, to act upon the budget requests of the Board of Education. The committee voted unanimously to accept the budget request from the Board of Education for $61,194,374, and that's both operating and capital. Put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, also, what committees did you hear on all that? I want to hear some talk about the library. Like, you should let him state the various committees. He doesn't have to give the figures.
Dennis, we vote on the Board of Ed separate. So
Yeah.
we have to do the Board of Ed now.
All right, okay.
And then he can do the rest of it.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Mr. Moderator, could you have him use a microphone, please?
He was.
He was.
It wasn't very close.
Okay, so Representative Preet, I didn't catch that last part there. What your motion was to accept this recommended by the Board of Finance?
Yeah, the motion coming out of the Education Subcommittee is to approve the Board of Education budget of $61,194,374.
Okay. Was there a second on that? Second, Representative Vernon. Okay. Any discussion from members of the RTM?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me? Is this
Yeah.
appropriate? Oh, there we go. We got one of those too. Check. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I feel compelled to make this statement because it concerns over half the town budget, $61 million, an inconsiderable sum, and a great many taxpayer dollars. It's a budget that recognizes the important work done by teachers, administrators, Branford parents, students, and the Board of Education in supporting learning and helping Branford's children remain competitive for work and for higher education in an increasingly opportunistic and challenging economy. Our children are considered for positions in colleges and for jobs alongside students and workers across the world. Having said that, we must look at the context of the education our town provides. it seems unquestionable to me and to many others that Branford could do better in the realm of educational outcomes and its academic reputation across the state. Families move to towns looking for exceptional educational opportunities. So the education system is a major driver of tax revenue, development, and community. It feels sometimes as though there is a cultural complacency that characterizes itself in the idea that somehow Branford's system is good enough, that what we have is acceptable, that what we're proud of amounts to, at least by Connecticut standards, mediocrity. The RTM is not a body that is designed or mandated to offer directive guidance to the school system on how to exceed or excel. We are given the ability to review the budget that the Board of Education and Board of Finance sends to us. People do not vote for representatives to overhaul educational systems any more than they vote for generals to overhaul militaries. Education is a science and an art, and we hire and fund expert professionals to do this work. I support approving the budget as well, but encourage the Board of Education and our educational leaders to search out opportunities to improve perceived and real performance and not to feel limited or constrained by the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the RTM listening? Representative Ricchio?
Good evening.
It's on, Mark.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My message tonight will be short and concise this evening. I will not be supporting the 2022-2023 educational budget. We, as a body, our job is to certify the budget that the Board of Finance sends to us. And we are not, our job is not to tell the Board of Education or really any other departments how to do their job. Our job is the money. I think everybody would agree with that for the most part. But one of the concerns I have is the RTM does not have the attention of the Board of Education. Why do I say that? Because since I've been on this body, since 2009, I found that most of the time, we always seem to easily approve their contracts, their employment contracts, in their budget ask. Just my opinion. Yeah, we ask questions, but it always seems to be a relatively easy process. And I've come to the realization after, 12, 13 years, it's always going to be like that. It's never going to change. It's never going to change. Recent examples is the process that we went through the last 2 years with the teacher's contract, which I voted against, which was narrowly approved. And what really upset me was the administrator's contract. And unfortunately, I was out of town the night of that RTM meeting. I would have voted against it. But we know that 9 people, 9 representatives abstained from that vote. Correct?
Yep.
And what really bothered me was in between when we had the COVID, first year of COVID, the administrators could not wait because they could not negotiate their contract during the first year of COVID. And they had to get their 1% increase. They had to get their lousy 1% increase while people in the service industries, restaurant owners, waitresses, waiters, were out of work. The administrators got their 1% increase, and then as we know, last December, they got their regular raise, whatever the amounts were. And that just kind of set me off. So tonight, I'm not going to talk about salaries. I'm not going to talk about what the superintendent makes, or what the principals make, or what the teachers make. I'm not going to talk about that. First, I want to go down, take a little trip down memory lane. And there's one number I forgot to put on this, which I will point to it. Oops, wrong one. I hope you can all see this. It always looks bigger on paper when you do it on a computer, doesn't it? 2010, so it's a recap of the Branford Public Schools since 2010. In 2010, we had 3,232 students. In 2022, we have just over 2,800. So it's a known fact that the enrollment has been going down every year. And that's also we're seeing that in other towns. The Branford Board of Education payroll in 2010 was $43 million. $43 million. And in 2022, it's $54 million. It ain't going down. Now, the number of staff, unfortunately, I didn't have, I tried to get that number because I worked on this afternoon. And I had a great conversation with Superintendent Hernandez and Mr. Neal. And unfortunately, they just didn't have enough time to put that number together, and I apologize for that, okay? But in 2022, we have about, from what I understand, it's 531 students, okay? I'm sorry, 531 staff people. I'm sure it's increased since 2010. But here's the good news, which the RTM body has done a good job with. In 2010, the Board of Education budget was increased 6.1%. Remember that, Representative Toohill?
Yes.
And Representative Black? Representative Sullivan, remember those days? Representative Amori? But the RTM has done a great job in keeping the increases pretty low. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of people like Eddie Preet and others that really worked together with the Board of Education to keep the increases relatively stable. And we're talking, you know, for the last, since 2010, the percentage increases constantly were under 2%. That's pretty darn good. Now let's talk about my concerns. That, in my opinion, is not getting any attention. Or if it is, no one's talked about it in these meetings. And I can only go based on what I read in the newspapers. And as I said to Mr. Superintendent Hernandez today, what I said to Superintendent Hernandez today, I don't think they do a good job telling us what they do good. Because we had a conversation about that, and Superintendent Hernandez was telling me some of the things that the town has done with students. And I'm talking about student results. Okay, my focus now is student results. And let me just look a moment. Okay. And what I did is I did a little research today, and I'm comparing all the other shoreline towns of what their rankings are based on the U.S. News World Report. And, you know, Cheshire is ranked, I put in Cheshire because it always seemed to be compared to Cheshire, but Cheshire was 29%, or 29th in the state, Clinton, 68th in the state, East Lyme, 36th in the state, East Haven, 149th, Branford's at 98th in the state when it comes to school rankings. Guilford, Madison, 32nd and 34th respectively. Old Saybrook, 57th. North Branford, 113. And Lyme, Old Lyme was 18th, and Westbrook, 82nd. So the question is why? And I've heard different reasons from the superintendent and from Representative Preet, but we keep giving teachers and administrators raises. And all I'm saying is, if you feel the same way about this that I do, you know, why are we 98th? And you want to do something about it, don't vote for this contract tonight. This contract's going to get passed. We all know it. There's 29 people in this meeting tonight. It's going to get passed. But have some courage and vote against it. If you voted against that administrator's contract, or those 9 that abstained in December, here's your chance to send a message to the Board of Education and get their attention and say, we've got to improve this. And let's see if we can help them improve it. They have a tough job. They have mandates and state mandates they have to deal with. Correct, Superintendent? You've got educational challenges, you have COVID challenges, you've got a diverse population challenges. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not trying to criticize, but let's get them the help that they need to make this number better. Because when people come and buy our houses, they want to know, if I put these kids into the Branford educational system, this is what they're going to look at. So thank you for your time, for giving me the time tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM? Representative Brooks?
First, through you, Mr. Moderator, could Representative Riccio clarify, is he making an amendment to that, or
No,
just saying?
He's just stating his opinion. There's no amendment being made.
Well, just to clarify, he asked for us to vote against this. Does that mean he wants us to vote against the entire amount? A percentage of the increase? If he doesn't want to clarify, I understand that. I'm just asking through you, is he clarifying that, or are we just voting against the whole, is he asking us to vote against the whole 61 million?
He's asking you to go vote against he's asking you to vote on the whole 61 million. Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak?
Let him answer.
What was that?
Let him answer.
Go ahead, Rick.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Representative, to Josh. Great question. I didn't expect anyone to ask that question, but I will make an amendment. I will propose an amendment that we give the Board of Education a 0% increase.
Is there a second on that?
I second it.
You second it? Any discussion on it from members of the RTM?
Moderator, I rise in opposition to the proposed amendment. We have a fair proposal before us, brought through the Board of Finance process, through the Board of Ed process, so I stand against it.
Anyone else? Representative Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also rise in opposition to the amendment. Going to a 0% budget increase sounds good. Thank you, Representative Brooks. For some folks, not for me though. As we know, a lot of the increases in the budget are contractual obligations, so a 0% increase actually means cuts for services for our students, cuts to our athletic teams, cuts to our arts in our schools. There's no way in my good conscience I could stand here and support a 0.0 increase for the school budget. So thank you, and encourage everybody else to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Brooks?
I am on the education committee, but was COVID hot for the vote, and was, as it turns out, in a family emergency for the discussion. So I didn't have a chance to ask my normal questions, and I'm not going to do it tonight. But I struggle, I have a bit of a struggle with this. I have a bit of a struggle, but we're going to just keep it to this. If at the current pace, in 10 years, the budget for the Board of Ed will be $73,117,648. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to keep. At some point, we have to come up with a plan to not allow it to continue to grow and continue to grow. I work hard for a living. I pay taxes, and I have lots of people that in Branford, like me, who are not wealthy people that work very hard, and we cannot keep spending more. And part of me on this budget where I'm struggling is there's money coming in from the ARPA funds, and I don't see how that money that's coming in is offsetting any of the increase. I always struggle with teachers' salaries and the increase based on the salaries from the year prior, yet we know that there's retirements, and that saves money, but I don't ever get to see that in the budget process. I'm glad that Representative Riccio made an amendment to the Education Committee, and I'm going to vote against this amendment. And I probably would have voted against even a $200,000 reduction. But I can't help but think from the years past, when maybe the Democrats had a few more seats at the table, and some of the Republicans would say some things to the Democrats about saving money. And I feel like there are opportunities to save money, and they're not being utilized. And as a Democrat, I may not save that money, so I can't. But I was told by another side of the aisle that I should be saving that money. And then when the opportunity is there, it's not being done. So I'm going to vote against it, but I like where your head's at.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment? Representative Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Whereas many of us in this room have spoken about some of the frustrations at the return on investment in the education department, I second the sentiments of Representative Sullivan. There's contractual obligations that have to be put forth. There's no way I'm taking money from the children, from the other sports and activities that have to be done. We may be able to go through it and find some cuts here and there, but I think, again, this body does what it should, and that we have to send it back to the Board of Education, not just the committee. The committees have been doing excellent work, but this amendment may have come from a Republican, but as a Republican and a conservative fiscally, I will not support that amendment. I will not. Thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM, which is Representative Amori, and then we'll go to Mr. Panic after that.
Thank you. Representative Riccio, I'm going to agree with you on two things. Not on the cut. I can't vote for the cut. But we are a body of about numbers, and that's the case. I'm an educator. I've been an educator for many years, and feel somewhat the frustration of only being about numbers in this instance. And the other thing you said was we don't have the outcomes.
It's about 2%. Yeah.
I'm concerned about how we're doing. I'm not on the Board of Ed, and I can only see it from the outside.
2%.
I think that there are many challenges in our school district. I don't want those challenges and the nature of our town, which has an enormous amount of economic diversity, which I think is one of our strengths. People can afford to live here. It's a great place to live. I grew up here. I went to Branford schools. I don't want us to use that excuse of why we're in the middle somewhere. It's hard to know how we're doing or why we're not doing better. I don't think money, 2% or 1% or a 0% increase is the answer. But this is the one time of the rolling year that we get to make a stand about some of this. And I don't want to see it be between March and May only. I'd like us to get the attention, have the attention of the Board of Ed, and have more information about what we're doing well and what the challenges are on a numbers basis, because that's what we are, right? We're about numbers. I won't support the amendment, Mark, but I want to, I wish to say and support Representative Bonenberger's statement so eloquently put, that we should do better. And I'm not sure what we could do to help, but I think we need more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Representative Sullivan pointed out that a zero budget, of course, would impose a real hardship on the school system, and I really recognize that. And it would, they have a lot of pressures already. One thing we have to bear in mind, though, is that our family had 3 kids in the schools, and I've really had very few opportunities to voice our misgivings about how that experience was. So we had to take all 3 kids eventually out of the Branford school system, and at great expense, put them in other schools. And for 3 kids, that's a ton of money. And we had to dig deep, and we had to go to places to find savings where there really were no savings. So the zero budget is not imposing any greater burden on them than was imposed on us by having an unsatisfactory school system. I was one of those who abstained in the recent discussion in December, and I described what my reservations were, and they still apply. And you're all right that our budget, we just approve numbers. So there's really, I feel frustrated, like Representative Mori, that there's really not a forum tonight. I don't wish to take too much time just talking about this. But it's, I think it sounds strange, but a zero budget would be fair because there's so many families that have to find alternatives at great expense. And that is what concerns me. Thank you very much.
Mr. Moderator.
All right, Representative Riccio?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would be willing to take my zero budget amendment off the table and throw it out there to the body and say, make a decision, vote for it the way it is. Again, I expect this body to approve the budget. It's going to get approved. But if you're questioning the numbers I showed on the board over here, that's why you're going to reject it. This is all about, I've already accomplished my goal. We got the Board of Education's attention tonight. At least I hope we did. You want their attention more? Vote against the contract.
So Representative Riccio, are you removing your amendment?
That's correct.
And you, Mr. Representative Stepanek, your second, are you removing it?
I'm moving my
Okay.
second as well.
Any more? Representative Leach?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will be extremely brief. It would be difficult to find someone who supports public education more than I do. I sent my own children through the public schools. I spent my entire 35 years as a public school educator and school psychologist. I am going to vote in favor of this budget tonight, despite my many concerns, some of which were pointed out eloquently by Representative Riccio. I'm hopeful that moving forward, Branford's school system will aspire to be the best it possibly can. I understand that socioeconomic factors are part of the formula for school success, and that not every town operates on equal footing. Ukraine was not on equal footing with Russia. There are no excuses for us not to do better in Branford. I plan to attend, I'm on the Education Committee, and I plan to pay more attention to this. It's my first year on the committee. I've only been to 3 meetings. But in the future, I will be paying more attention. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Preet now.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you, I just wanted to address some of Representative Brooks's concerns. There are, from my understanding, hundreds of restrictions on the ARPA funds. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe they can be used for operating expenses. I could be wrong. But so that may be why you're not seeing it. The other thing I wanted to touch on, and Representative Riccio and I had a very long discussion this morning, and I thought a very good one. There seems to be a correlation with folks that we have, X amount of students, and the budget is X amount of dollars. But there's a lot more in this budget besides the number of students to the amount of money. We have health insurance costs, not we, the Board of Ed. There's Social Security taxes, there's retirement contributions, there's unemployment tax, there's dental insurance, there's transportation costs. All of this has gone up in the last 12 years. So you're focusing on salaries, okay, but there's a lot more in the budget than just salaries. And I'll grant that the majority of the budget is salaries, but there's more to it. My other concern is, I'm hearing, I want to get the Board of Education's attention, I haven't been able to talk, I haven't been able to express my views. The Board of Education budget goes through 6 steps. First it gets presented to the Board of Ed, then it goes to the Board of Finance, then it comes to my subcommittee, then we go to caucus, then it comes back to my subcommittee, and then it comes here. I was at the Board of Education meetings, I was at the Board of Finance meetings, and obviously I was at the subcommittee meetings. Nobody on this body came to any of those meetings proposing adjustments, questioning the budget. I'm questioning why we wait till the 11th hour when we're here to vote on it, that all of a sudden there's all these glamorous proposals that people want to make. You've had 2.5 months to express your concerns. And I've been to those meetings, and no one is there. So I'm just questioning why all of a sudden there's a concern about the budget. Thank you.
All right, anyone else from the RTM wishing to address this item on the education budgets? Anyone from the public wishes to speak to this? Or come up, you have to use the microphone. So you understand, Mrs. Romy, that the amendment is done. We're talking about the actual education budget itself now.
Yes, thank you. With regard to, good evening. With regard to the, sorry. It'll pick up. Oh, cool, thank you. Good evening.
That's better.
You know, in the discussion, I've heard a few people say that they don't have the attention of the Board of Education or the district. If I may, I'd like to say that we do have the attention when it meets their convenience. Okay. So to say we have their attention, we don't have their attention, there's a middle ground. And when it comes time for money, that's when we have their attention. And that's the mechanism by which this body operates. You know, over the past few months, I've had opportunity to speak to probably about half of the people on the RTM, some longer than others, including the first selectman. And I'll tell you two things, kind of common threads, and two things certainly resonate. One is that, you know, no disrespect to the superintendent, but I have yet to hear anybody say that, wow, we need the superintendent to continue as long as possible. I think if anybody feels that way, I have not spoken to them, they haven't dialogued that to me. The second thing that certainly resonates that I hear consistently from a number of people, and again on both sides of the aisle, I don't care who's Republican or who's Democrat, you're either part of this problem or you're part of this solution. It's just that simple. You know, the thing is that it's interesting. The other thing is that the Board of Ed, everybody's pointing the finger at the Board of Ed. And, you know, look, there's truth there. There's plenty of truth. They have one thing that they're responsible for, one person, one entity. And, you know, as you all are sitting here juggling a million balls of everything that is pretty much non-education related to this town, I imagine sometimes that can seem maybe even easy in comparison. But the truth is that there is a shared responsibility, and to say that, well, the Board of Ed, let's point the finger there, let's use all our fingers and all our toes to point the finger at them, that doesn't absolve this body. This body speaks in terms of numbers. I've spoken and brought, you know, Mr. Preet has talked about how a number of people have brought concerns at the last minute. I've been speaking about stuff for months. Well, actually years, but who's counting? You know, time flies fast when you're having fun, I guess. But the deal is that we keep talking about the school district. What are we protecting? What are we trying to, oh no, we don't want to upset the apple cart. We don't want to this, we don't want to that. 24.9% decrease in enrollment, 31% increase in budget, a 15% favorability rating for district leadership among district employees, okay? And this is not This is not discovery, this is verification of what's been known for quite some time. Turnover that is rampant. It's been said to me that there are 25 paraprofessional openings right now. Information is very tough to get from district leadership, but when you add 25 paraprofessionals to what's on the website this afternoon, there are 60 openings in the district, 15% favorability rating. So we're sitting here, some people are sitting here saying, wow, I don't want to take money away from the children. And may I respectfully suggest that that sounds great in a vacuum, but in truth, what we're doing is we're continuing to enable and embolden an entity with numbers that are not favorable. So, yeah, in a vacuum, it sounds good, it sounds great at a party to say, oh, no, I'm not going to take money from these people. Look what that's going to do for our children. The superintendent will cut this, the superintendent will cut that. May I also share, if you're concerned about what the superintendent is going to do and how he might adversely use that, may I respectfully suggest that that could be more of a reason to do it, okay? It is a non-vote of confidence for district leadership and a non-vote of confidence where you wouldn't be alone because 85% of the people that are working in this district have no confidence via that vote. And the reason why we know those numbers now is because this was the first year, the most recent climate was the first year that they gave us. These are the district's own numbers, their own survey, and the reason why we have these numbers is because this is the first time ever, as I have learned it, from multiple people, that this is the first time where there was a greater layer of anonymity given to the people that were taking this survey. They did not have to log into something via their own email address. So you add it all up, and we're talking about we don't want to upset the apple cart, we don't want to this, and we don't want to that. Folks, the apple cart is upset, all right? And this is the way that you all talk. Numbers. I've given 11 different, via previous emails. You said, the message that I was getting is, hey, Geraldman, we don't want to hear about the climate, the school standings, the this and the that. Break it down to numbers and cents. So I did. All right, I did. In that Board of Ed meeting that Mr. Preet speaks so fondly of those 11, one subject came up, one and only one, and that was the lack of a line item expense budget. I agree with Mr. Riccio. This budget is going to get approved. I look at this and I see all the people here. They don't know much about what's going on, with all due respect. Not everybody, a lot don't, okay? If I were to ask, if somebody were to ask who are the 9 board members, how many would be able to say that? But you know, I see a lot of people here in terms of eye contact, body language, etc. They have a lot of confidence. They don't know what the hell it is they're voting for, but they know how they're voting. And this all plays very well into something because at the end of the day, after all is said and done, we have a group of people here, we have a group of people there. In the middle, we have a bowl of porridge. Okay? Porridge is too hot. Porridge is too cold. Meanwhile, in the middle, we have district leadership. And while everybody's pointing their fingers and playing games and playing politics, okay? District leadership is eating the porridge. And is this anything to be proud of? My answer is no. And if that's the case, then please do something about it. If a zero budget is too much, meet in the middle, 1%. Okay. Another consideration in closing is how can, I put myself in your situation of saying, all right, I'm an RTM member. I'm going to vote on something that's half of the budget. Do I have enough information with which to do it? Mr. Hernandez talks a great deal about transparency, and I'm no expert in accounting, I guarantee you this, but it would seem to me that the best part of bringing transparency into a budget is something with line item expenses. We've talked for many years, okay, about line item expenses and the lack of it. It's not there. So we have a lot of people very comfortable, it seems, to vote for a budget. They don't know what the hell it is they're voting for. And that makes us look bad. But again, it's great for the superintendent, it's great for district leadership with their 15% favorability rating, okay? And it serves as an enabler for that. And it's very disheartening to say this, and I have to say as a Republican, I'm appalled. This is a horrible look. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Hearing none, we're back to the motion from Representative Preet to approve the education budget as recommended by the Board of Finance.
Roll call?
We'll do a roll call, yeah. A yes vote, you're for the education budget. A no vote, you're against.
Representative Alphone?
Yes.
Representative Amore? Representative Anderson?
Yes.
Representative Barron?
Yes.
Representative Black?
Yes.
Black, yes.
Thank you. Representative Bonenberger?
Yes.
Representative Brooks?
Yes.
Representative Conklin?
Yes.
Representative Everson?
Yes.
Representative Erlanger?
Yes.
Representative Greenberg?
Yes.
Representative Healy?
Yes.
Representative Henschel?
Yes.
Representative Hines?
Yes.
Representative Ingraham?
Yes.
Representative Kelly?
Yes.
Representative Leach? Yes. Representative Maresca?
Yes.
Representative Preet?
Yes.
Representative Ricchio?
No.
Representative Shrestha?
Yes.
Representative Sires?
Yes.
Representative Stepanik?
No.
Representative Sullivan?
Yes.
Representative Torelli?
Claire?
Abstain?
Representative Toohill?
Yes.
Representative Verderam?
Yes.
Representative Wells?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't.
I have 25 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstain.
Okay. Education budget passes. Moving on to Ways and Means. Representative Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Actually,
Want to finish the rest of the ed?
The rest of education.
Well, the rest of the education is you're going to, the Blackstone Library.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm going to pass my time to represent the
Thank you, Representative Healy. Through you, Mr. Moderator, again, the Education Subcommittee met on Monday, May 2nd, to act upon the budget request for the departments under our purview. The committee voted unanimously on all of our budgets, which include school-age child care for $373,460, adult education for $71,600, for the Willoughby Wallace Library for $262,891, and for the Blackstone Library for $35,000 in capital and for $1,650,816 in operating. And Mr. Moderator, if I can just take a minute before we vote, I just wanted to let the body know that our Blackstone Library Director, Karen Jensen, is retiring at the end of next month. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge her leadership over the past 10 years. She's been a tremendously effective in leading the library through the COVID pandemic, through a new strategic plan, and through a period of extraordinary growth, including the renovations. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge her dedication and wish her well in her retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I put in the form of the motion for the other 5 budgets.
Is there a second? Any discussion from members of the RTM? Any discussion from members of the public? Hearing none, all those in favor, sorry. Gentleman in the back. Can you identify yourself, sir?
Yes, my name is Adam Spilka. I'm the assistant, My name is Adam Spilka. I'm the assistant treasurer of the Blackstone. And I rarely speak without notes, but the Blackstone is looking for a new director. And the board, in its wisdom, has proposed that I be the next president. And I simply wanted to say that the Blackstone is committed to continuing the excellent relationship that it has formed with Mr. Preet in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion by Representative Preet signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item carries. Education budget is approved. Now we can move on to Ways and Means, Representative Healy.
Oh, yay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, the Ways and Means had 2 meetings. We met on April the 6th as a regular meeting and a special meeting on May the 4th to review and act upon the department's budgets that fall under our purview as approved by the Board of Finance. Those departments were principal debt service, interest debt service, the contingency fund, conservation environment, the recreational department, Parks and Open Space Authority, Branford Cable TV, Board of Finance, Fiscal Services, Public Celebration, Sewer Assessment Fund, Pensions Contributions, Employee Group Insurance, and the municipality insurance. The motion was made and it was passed unanimously, 3-0, and I put its passage in the form of a motion. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
All right, so your motion is to approve the Ways and Means budget?
The budget as
recommended by the Board of Finance with no changes?
That we approved, yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Any discussion, anybody from the public wishing to speak? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Ways and Means budget passes. Moving on to Rules and Ordinance. Representative Black.
I'm going to defer to Representative Anderson. She chaired the meeting.
Gee, thanks, Peter.
All the budgets.
Okay, unprepared, okay. The rules and ordinances met on April 19th. We looked at the building inspection enforcement, inland wetlands, planning and zoning, zoning board of appeals, economic development, water pollution control. Everybody presented their budgets. They were all in line by the Board of Finance. The committees all voted for all of the budgets as presented. And I have to say that everybody that spoke at that meeting cares so much about the town. It showed in what they talked about. It showed in their budgets. They were respectful. They were thoughtful. And I really appreciate all of the departments that came to us to present. They did a wonderful job, and I put that into a form of a motion.
Okay, your recommendation is to approve your budget as recommended by the Board of Finance with no changes, is that correct?
No changes.
Okay, anyone from the RTM wishing to speak to this? Representative Brooks.
I was at that meeting and I voted to approve this because all of the reasons Representative Anderson said. So I haven't been on the RTM for a bit, and so when I was on the RTM, when budget time came around, we'd always make little adjustments, amendments. We'd cut a little bit out of this, and I was all excited because on the night of the R&O, I wanted to add money to a couple of departments, but you can't do that. So I was hoping that somebody would cut some from somewhere else and I could add them now, but I'm clearly not going to get that opportunity. So I just want to say publicly now, while we're all here, the building department is overwhelmed with what is going on in society right now. Just so much work they have. And by the way, it's bringing a lot of money into the town as a result. So I just want us to all keep an open mind for both the building department and planning and zoning, that should they need extra money because they need extra help, we should be ready to take that out of contingency unless somebody wants to make an amendment and I can try to get it then. Other than that, we'll get it out of contingency later, but that was an observation I made, and had I been allowed to add to the overall budget, I would have that night, but you make that happen. So,
Anyone else from the RTM wishing to speak to this side? From the public? Hearing none. All those in favor of the rules and ordinance budget signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The budget passes. Moving on to public services. Representative Conklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Public Services Committee met on April the 7th to see the presentations for 10 budgets as amended by the Board of Finance. Those budgets are municipal government buildings, solid waste management, police services special detail, public works, docks and recreation, animal control, engineering, fire services, and emergency management. After 2 weeks to study the budgets a little further, we met in special session April 21st, and all the budgets were approved as amended unanimously 4-0. And I put that in the form of a motion.
Motion on the floor to approve the public services budget with, as recommended by the Board of Finance. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I need to apologize for Chairman Conklin and the department heads for the Public Services Group. I was in Disney World the night of that meeting, so I was not able to attend, and I also chose not to Zoom in. But I'm actually rising to make an amendment to the committee report. I would like to, and it's probably no surprise to anybody here, but I'm still opposed to budgeting for the Public Works Director position, which is a $110,000 salary, and it even gets a raise this year in our budget. So I'm going to make a motion to remove $110,305 and out of the regular wages and salaries line item and move that into contingency for this year. I still don't think we should be taxing for, at least this way there's a little bit more control and it's not just a bag of money hanging out in public works. So that's my motion, to move $110,305 out of regular wages and salaries and put it into contingency for the budget. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Representative Maury. Discussion from members of the RTM.
I just have one more piece of discussion. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this motion.
Any discussion for Representative Tristan?
Where's the microphone? Thank you. Through you,
Yeah.
Representative Sullivan. What happens, I understand what you're saying, I get it. So what happens to that money at the end of the budget year? Is it still sitting there? The money that you want to remove, is it still sitting there? Does it come back to us? Is it the same money being allocated over and over again?
Go ahead,
Through
Representative
you,
Sullivan.
Mr. Moderator. So just in our last meeting, we transferred $48,000 out of the wages and salaries line item to cover other expenses in the department. My motion would move the salary, part of the salary line item into contingency. And so if those dollars were needed to be spent, they would have to make a request to transfer it out of contingency for this year, as opposed to just spending it down within the department. Or they could fill the position and hire a full-time director.
Understood. So they use the money? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the RTM wishes to speak to this amendment? Hearing none, this request for a roll call vote. A yes vote is in favor of Representative Sullivan's amendment. A no vote is against.
Representative Alphone.
No.
Representative Amore.
Yes.
Representative Anderson.
No.
Representative Barron.
No.
Okay. Representative Black is no. Representative Bonenberger.
Abstain.
Representative Brooks.
Yes.
Representative Conkling.
No.
Representative Everson.
Yes.
Representative Erlanger.
Yes.
Representative Greenberg.
No.
Representative Healy.
No.
Representative Henschel.
Yes.
Representative Hines.
No.
Representative Ingraham.
No.
Representative Kelly.
No.
Representative Leach, yes. Representative Maresca.
No.
Representative Preet.
No.
Representative Ricchio.
No.
Representative Shrestha.
Rob? Representative Fresca? He can't. Ram, can you hear us?
Oh, this is me?
Yep.
Yes. It's very hard to hear.
You got a house full there.
Representative Sires.
No.
Representative Stepanik.
No.
Representative Sullivan.
Representative Sullivan votes yes.
Representative Torelli.
Yes.
Representative Toohill.
No.
Representative Verduran.
No.
Representative Wells.
No.
Okay, hopefully I have this right. 18 no, 9 yes, 1 abstain.
Okay, the amendment fails. We're back to the main motion from Public Services to approve the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
1 no vote. Abstentions? Public Services budget passes. Moving on to Administrative Services.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Last but not least, Administrative Services met during a regular meeting on April 5th to hear presentations for the fiscal year 2022-2023 budgets of Human Services, Tax Collector, Elections, Information Technology, Elderly Services, East Shore Health District Department, Human Resources / Labor Relations, Assessor, Board of Assessment Appeals, Probate Court, Executive, Legal Services, Legislative, and Town Clerk. All budgets passed unanimously as presented in our May meeting 7-0. Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to approve all department budgets as recommended to the RTM by the Board of Finance.
Any discussion from members of the RTM?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Representative Everson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The budget, I'm going to speak to the budget overall, the town side. The budget that before us is a good one, especially for the taxpayer, holding the mill rate to the same level it was last year. The town budget meets the obligations of labor contracts we've previously approved for staff that keep our services in order. They should be recognized for the work they continue to do despite the many challenges thrown their way during COVID. So thank you to the town staff and personnel. Initially, the Republican-led administration proposed a 6% increase in spending. 6% on top of the cost burdens and inflation we're facing would have been difficult for hardworking families and aging seniors. In its wisdom, the Board of Finance carefully reviewed and cut the proposed increase from 6% to just over 3% in taxes. That 3% is offset by a grand list that has grown. There were also big jumps in revenues for the town from the real estate transfer tax and building permit fees in the last year, and the weaving in of over $2 million of the town's $8 million allocation of the Federal American Rescue Plan dollars on the capital side of the budget. It's a winning combination in the end for the taxpayer this year. The untold story is the town debt, currently $84.4 million. It will take 20 years to pay off. What's being spent today will be repaid by the next generation. More borrowing is coming with necessary renovations to the police department building that could cost between $3 and $5 million. It will be interesting to see if the political will exists to repeat this hold the line on taxes budget next year. While I may not agree with all of the expenditures in this budget, I will be voting for it overall because it benefits the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to this Administrative Services? Hearing none, all those in favor of the recommendation of the Administrative Services to approve the budget as recommended by the Board of Finance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Now we move on to the main motion again. So now we're back to the main motion that Representative Ingraham put forth to approve the total budget of $124,524,065. This will be a roll call vote. A yes vote is in favor, a no vote is against. Huh?
Is there any other discussion?
I know. Any discussion on this? Okay, roll call vote. Yes vote for it, no vote no, against it.
Okay, Representative Alphone.
Yes.
Representative Amore.
Yes.
Representative Anderson.
Yes.
Representative Barron. Excuse me, Barron.
Yes.
Representative Black.
Yes.
Representative Bonenberger.
Yes.
Representative Brooks.
Yes.
Representative Conklin.
Yes.
Representative Everson.
Yes.
Representative Erlanger.
Yes.
Representative Greenberg.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Henschel.
Yes.
Hensel?
There he is.
Okay, thank you.
He's finding a mute button.
Yes.
You're good, thank you.
Representative Hines.
Yes.
Representative Ingraham.
Yes.
Representative Kelly.
Yes.
Representative Leach is yes. Representative Maresca.
Yes.
Representative Preet.
Yes.
Representative Ricchio.
Yes.
Representative Shrestha. Representative Shrestha.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Sires.
Yes.
Representative Stepanik.
Yes.
Representative Sullivan.
No.
Representative Torelli.
Yes.
Representative Toohill.
Yes.
Representative Verderam.
Yes.
Representative Wells.
Yes.
So we have 27 yes, 1 no.
Okay, the vote, the budget passes with no, as recommended by the Board of Finance, but most important, no tax increases to the taxpayers of Branford. Moving on to these other items. Moving on to these other items on the call, and I know some of them the committee already approved, but I have to go through the formality and go through this all over again. So item number 5, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance for an appropriation of $63,051 to the Open Space Fund budget for fiscal 2022-2023.
You only have to ask for discussions.
Huh? Yeah.
You only have to ask for discussion, it was already approved.
No, I know that. I just already happened. So, any discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, item passes. Item number 6, to consider if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $14,949 to the Sewer Assessment Fund budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Is there a nay there?
Yes.
Huh? One and one. Any abstentions? Okay, item passes. Item 7, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $71,600 to the BOE Shoreline Adult Education Enrichment Fund budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Any discussion? Representative Preet.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, through you, I just want to remind the RTM that this is a self-funding budget, so there's no cost to the taxpayer on this.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Avoid them straggling nose.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to item 8, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance and appropriation of $373,460 to the BOE School Age Share Care Fund budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Any discussion? Representative Preet.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to remind the body again that this also is a self-funding budget, so there's no cost to the taxpayers.
Any other discussion on the item? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Item 9, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance for an appropriation of $4,797,809 to the wastewater treatment plant budget for fiscal 2022-2023. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries. Moving on to item 10, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $441,900 $935 to the Animal Control Fund budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, item carries. Item 11, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $1,813,938 to the Human Services Special Revenue Fund for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, item passes. Item 12, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance of an appropriation of $404,000 to the lease fund budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, item carries. Moving on to item 13, to consider and appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance an appropriation of $2,232,000 to the ARPA fund budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023. Any discussion from members of the RTM? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, item carries. Item 14, to consider and if appropriate, approve the recommendation of the Board of Finance that the RTM evaluate the request to fund the positions of Register of Voters on a full-time basis beginning January 1, 2023, for each year of the two-year term of office at the rate of pay recommended by the Human Resources Department and approved by the RTM. This recommendation will be made pursuant to an analysis of the department's operations and staffing requirements. Representative Verderam.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Administrative Services Committee voted to re-refer this item because we felt more time and research was needed. Thank you.
Any discussion from members of the RTM? Representative Brooks?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, is there any time sensitivity here for this?
For the election.
Before the next election.
We got time.
Yes.
Y'all can meet all summer.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak to this? Any of the registrars want to speak to this? Mr. Halley, Mr. Lawler?
It's re-referred.
No? Okay. Motion on the floor is to re-refer this item. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? This item is re-referred. Item 15, is there any other business to come before the RTM?
Mr. Moderator.
Selectman Cosgrove.
I just want to, before this meeting adjourns, it's my 9th budget, and I just want to thank everybody for their time that they put in. I know it does require a lot of time and commitment, but this is I think looking back at all 9 budgets, it's something that we should be very proud of as a town and as an administration. You know, this budget, yes, we're pleased that we're able in an inflationary time to deliver a budget with no tax increase to the residents. That was something that was very important to my personally and to this administration as we went through the process. However, I think it's also important to reflect briefly, because I know it's been a long night, but on the last 9 budgets and what we've accomplished over those 9 budgets. We have a very strong track record of being fiscally responsible. We have a very strong track record of being sensitive to taxpayers, the burden. But we've addressed our liabilities. We put Branford in a better position for future generations. We've addressed over $100 million in projects in this 9 years. And that debt service that was mentioned earlier by Representative, that is actually decreasing year over year. That's part of the ability that we're able to deliver the tax increase. And that was strategically laid out over this period of time, knowing we were going to be in a time where we were going to address a lot of infrastructure and departmental needs. by this department in this town. So I just want to thank this body. I want to thank the Board of Finance. I want to thank the Finance Department, Catherine LaVanca, the Assistant Finance Director, here with us tonight, Jim Finch. All play a part in ensuring that we, this body, the administration, can continue to provide a level of programs and services to the people of Branford while being mindful of the burden placed on the taxpayer. We are fortunate in our area. We're one of the lowest mill rates for this region. And we do provide great programs, services, and invest in our town. Something that we should all be proud of. I thank you for your time. And, as far as budget number 10 next year, I'm not worried about if we have the political will. We're going to continue to do what we've always done, is to come in with reasonable budgets. And we're going to come in with budgets that meet our town's needs, address programs and services, while continuing to be mindful of the burden on the taxpayer. So I thank you again. Have a good night.
Thank you, Selectman Cosgrove. Any other business to come before the RTM? Hearing none, then we're moving on to item 16, adjournment. There's a motion on the floor to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is that coming from Representative Torelli? Is there a second? I'll second. All those in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.
Good night, all.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.